This isn't about aesthetics, Margaret. It's about safety. You're the one endangering this community, Harper.
My name's Samuel Harper, 64, a retired park ranger with 30 years under my belt, still waking up at 4:30 a.m. sharp, whether I like it or not. For the past 15 years, I've lived alone on a half-acre plot at the edge of Willow Creek, a quiet stretch where the suburbs meet the untamed sprawl of Blackthorn Woods. My home is a cedar-sided cabin I built with my late wife, Clara, before cancer stole her in 2010. Isn't just a house. It's a piece of us, carved into the earth. If you've ever felt a loved one's presence in the rustle of leaves or the glow of dawn across a porch, you'll know why this place is sacred to me. The fence I built along the northern edge of my property wasn't for show. It was a fortress 6-foot oak posts, steel wire, and concrete footings sunk deep to hold against the storms and erosion of Willow Creek's temperamental seasons. It marked the line where my land met the deer trails and, more importantly, the paths of the wild hogs that roamed Blackthorn Woods. These weren't your storybook pigs. They were feral beasts, some weighing 300 pounds, with tusks sharp enough to gut a man. They moved in packs, tearing through the forest like a plague, uprooting trees and carving trenches in the soil. Back in '09, one charged through our backyard, shattering a deck chair and leaving a trail of blood from a raccoon it had mauled. That's when Clara and I doubled down, reinforcing the fence to keep the chaos at bay. For 14 years, it worked. My neighbors, especially those downhill, slept easier knowing the hogs stayed in the woods. Then came the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I should have seen trouble coming when they rolled in with their starched shirts and smug clipboards, calling themselves the Willow Creek Enhancement Committee. Enhancement, my foot. I wasn't part of their HOA when I bought this land in '06. The subdivision sprouted up later, a developer cramming 20 cookie-cutter houses onto the neighboring plot between 2012 and 2017. Suddenly, my property, grandfathered and free, was deemed non-compliant. It started small letters about my mailbox being too rustic or my shed not meeting architectural standards. Then they set their sights on my fence. The first letter arrived in April, printed on crisp letterhead that screamed self-important bureaucracy. Dear Mr. Harper, it read, the boundary structure on the northern edge of your property violates Section 8B of the Willow Creek Design Code, specifically regarding unapproved perimeter fencing. 2 pages of jargon followed. Not one word about the hogs or safety, just visual harmony and community standards. They demanded I tear it down. I called their office, left a voicemail explaining my history as a ranger, the fence's purpose, and the hog problem. No response. A week later, a second letter arrived with a $600 fine and a 30-day deadline. I didn't take kindly to ultimatums. I fired back with a certified letter, for pages long, citing state wildlife codes, hog migration data from my ranger days, and photos of hog damage from a decade ago. I thought reason would prevail. It didn't. By June, I noticed SUVs creeping past my house, folks in khakis snapping photos of my fence like I was running a meth lab. One guy even photographed me while I was pruning my apple tree. I gave him a wave. He didn't return it. Then came the notice for an HOA compliance hearing. I declined to attend not out of spite, but because I'd said my piece. My land, my fence, my right. At dawn the next day, I woke to the growl of a backhoe. 3 contractors in neon vests were ripping out my fence posts like they were pulling weeds. I stormed out in my work boots and a flannel shirt, yelling, "You're on my property." They pointed to a work order from the HOA president, Margaret Voss, a woman with the charm of a tax auditor and the ego of a small dictator. No sheriff's notice. No court order, just her signature on a flimsy sheet of paper. I told them to stop. They didn't. By noon, my fence was gone, the northern edge of my land exposed like an open wound. From the tree line, I swear I saw a hog's eyes glinting, waiting. The fallout came fast. By Tuesday, neighbors were posting on the community app, something tore up my rose bushes last night. My dog Spooked found hoof marks in the yard. A blurry photo surfaced of a young hog, maybe 150 pounds, rooting in a backyard. By the weekend, 7 homes reported damage, smashed fences, shredded lawns, a dented car hood from a panicked swerve. One neighbor's cat barely escaped. The HOA, instead of owning their mistake, sent me a letter. Mr. Harper, Your failure to manage your property has led to wildlife incursions endangering our community. Submit a mitigation plan within 72 hours or face escalating fines. I was livid. They'd torn down the one thing keeping the hogs out, and now I was the scapegoat? I drafted a response, attaching photos of the wrecked fence, time-stamped security footage, and a wildlife service report I'd filed weeks earlier warning of the risks. I CC'd the local paper, the county commissioner, and a lawyer friend from my ranger days, Ellen Carter. The next day, my inbox buzzed with replies. Ellen stood out. Sam, they've poked the wrong grizzly. Let's talk. The HOA called an emergency safety meeting, plastering mailboxes with urgent notices. I hadn't planned to go, but the audacity of their blame game changed my mind. I ironed my old ranger uniform shirt, pinned on my badge, and walked into the community center. The room was packed: families, retirees, even a few cops at the door. Margaret Voss stood at the front, wielding a PowerPoint like a weapon. Her slides showed damaged yards and a toppled mailbox, captioned Community Crisis. She waved a stack of papers, calling my fence an eyesore, non-compliant, and dangerous. No mention of the hogs. No mention of their bulldozer. I waited until she finished, then stepped to the podium. I opened a folder and held up a photo. This was my fence 3 days before your contractors destroyed it, I said. Here's a hog pack at the tree line, same day. Murmurs spread. I flipped to another image. This is the Miller's backyard, the day after. That's a 200-pound hog where their kids play. A woman gasped. I looked at Margaret. I warned you. Twice. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about your negligence. The room went silent. Then an older man, Frank Grayson, stood. What are you going to do about it, Sam? I nodded. Make sure they can't do this to anyone else. The next morning, I met Ellen on her porch, the air thick with the scent of cedar and damp earth. She'd seen this before: HOAs overreaching, banking on residents' apathy. They trespassed, Sam, she said, tapping a legal pad. California Penal Code 602. And with the hog damage, we've got negligent endangerment and property destruction. We spent days building a case. Photos, emails, my old ranger reports on hog patterns, and a bombshell HOA bylaws stating they needed a majority vote to claim jurisdiction over my land. No vote had ever happened. We filed a cease and desist letter demanding no further action on my property, followed by a lawsuit for trespassing, property damage, and violating state wildlife codes. But the HOA didn't back down. One morning, I heard engines aga in a bulldozer and Margaret's SUV, HOA magnets gleaming. She claimed they were clearing hazardous brush for fire safety. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and confronted her. You're violating a court order, I said. She smirked. We're protecting the community. The contractor hesitated, asking for a permit. I pulled out the judge's injunction. Margaret's face reddened as Deputy Tom Reed, an old ranger buddy, rolled up. Leave, Margaret, he said, or I arrest you for contempt. She stormed off, her convoy trailing like a scolded dog. The video went viral on the community app. Neighbors were furious. Flyers appeared. Enough is enough. Community meeting tonight. Over 80 households showed up at the park. I spoke from a picnic table. This isn't about my fence. It's about who gets to decide what's ours. They tore down safety and called it beauty. We can't let that stand. Frank stood, waving the bylaws. We need 25% of households to recall the board. By night's end, we had 102 signatures. Then the hogs struck again. 6 homes reported attacks: torn fences, a cracked car windshield, a woman with a sprained wrist from a fall. The local news ran it. Wild hogs ravage Willow Creek after HOA removes barrier. Wildlife Services set traps and issued warnings, blaming the disruption of natural barriers. At a town hall, Margaret tried to spin it, but the crowd wasn't having it. A mother stood. My son saw blood on his slide. You said it was about beauty. Frank shouted. Recall vote, Saturday. Margaret sat, silent. The vote was electric. The community center overflowed, ballots counted under a retired judge's eye. Final tally, 41 for recall, 29 against. The board was dissolved. Cheers erupted, neighbors hugging like they'd won a war. Ellen clapped my shoulder. You rewrote this town's story, Sam. That night, kids and retirees helped me start rebuilding the fence. No HOA, no fines, just neighbors. At the courthouse, Ellen presented our case. Timelines, photos, deputy footage, wildlife reports. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Clara Evans, didn't blink. Margaret's lawyer stammered, unable to deny the trespass or the hog chaos. Judge Evans ruled for MEFL restitution for the fence, legal fees, and a referral for criminal charges against the HOA for trespass and fraud. Margaret's face was a mask of defeat. Willow Creek changed. The community center became a hub for classes on gardening and wildlife safety. Neighbors rebuilt fences together, donated by a local mill. One evening, I got a Laterno name, just $400 and a note. I voted against you. I was wrong. Keep protecting us. I gave it to the community fund for a park bench, inscribed, for the line that held. Months later, I led a task force on wildlife boundaries, setting rules for developments near forests. Margaret faced charges for financial misconduct. Turns out, the HOA funneled money to her cousin's consulting firm. Standing by my new fence, I watched a hog pack pass in the distance, not crossing. A girl, Lily, from down the street, waved, sketching flowers by the gate. "We're safe now, Mr. Harper," she said. I nodded. Not just from hogs, but from those who'd silence us. This wasn't just my fight, it was ours. We didn't just rebuild a fence. We built a community that speaks, stands, and protects what matters. Every morning, I walk the fence line, coffee in hand, Clara's old mug chipped but steady. Neighbors join me now, not out of fear, but because we've learned what it means to hold a line together. What do you think about standing up to bullies, whether they're wild animals or clipboard tyrants? Have you faced injustice in your own life, big or small, and fought back? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand.